Hey everyone, welcome back to the shop. I hope you're doing well. What you see in front of you here is a fake drawer setup that I did using a dovetail jig a few months ago when I bought the jig. It was for a project that I ended up changing the way I did the drawer, so I didn't end up using it. However, I have another project coming up in the next while, and I'm going to use the dovetail jig for some drawers. So I finished setting it up the other weekend, and while I was doing that, I was wandering around the shop looking for one of my drills, and I decided to use some of the scrap ply that I have left over from my table saw build to build myself a little drill holder, if you will, that's going to be mounted on the wall. So I'm going to use the dovetail jig, just for interest's sake, to do the connections onto the box that I'm building for the drills to hang off of. That will be mounted on the wall. This is a pretty strong joint, which is why we use it for drawers all the time. So this direction is usually the way the drawers are sitting. So direction of pull, for example, is that way. So this is going to be mounted on the wall. Not this piece, is my sample piece. It's going to be mounted on the wall, so the direction of pull will be that way. So what I'm going to show you next is I'm going to set these pieces up in my dovetail jig. I'll go through the setup for that. We'll bore out the dovetails, the half-line dovetails, and then we'll glue it up and go from there. All right, here we are at the dovetail jig. This is the quarter cable dovetail jig. I haven't used this a ton. Like I said, I've just used it for a couple of small projects. Probably going to use it more now that it's somewhat set up. Once you spend the time and get this thing dialed in, there's a little bit of fiddling around to get it set up when you change projects, but again, once it's dialed in for that project, it's pretty much set it and forget it. The one thing I will point out on the front of this one that is different than a lot of other ones that you'll see, this is, they call it a VRS. It's a vacuum and router support system. So the little hose that you can see underneath there is attached to my shop vacuum. It rides on this aluminum rail that's in front of it that goes back and forth, and it eliminates, I'm going to say, 90% of the dust from using the router in here, which you'll see shortly when I have this turned on and using it. Works really well. I'm super happy with it. Adds additional support. Your router sits right here, rides this thing back and forth, and it sits over top of these two pieces. It's just held on by basically tension springs, so it pops right off really easily. So chuck that to the side. What you can see here is I have the template in place. This is clamped in. This is going to be one of my sideboards. That's the length of the object. Inside here, very hard to see. Again, we can always go into this in greater detail if you're interested. This is my offset adjustment. So we go in here, tighten this offset up. The one thing I will mention if you're using this jig for the first time or unfamiliar with these jigs, you have to set these up very, very carefully the first time when you're setting up your project. Highly recommend doing a test cut. I have done a test cut on the 3/4 inch ply. I haven't done it on one this width, so first time for everything. It'll be exciting. So what I've done is I've adjusted so that my gap in here is exactly the same. I'm not routing or cutting a slot into this thing, so this I've just left it exactly the same distance between these two. It's a little fiddly to get there. I use a caliper to get my distance here and here exactly the same. And then once that's set, we're good. This piece just slides in like so. I have to make sure it's butted up against the other side of this adjustment. So there's my one side clamped in place. This one is going to butt up against the other side in the corner there. Everything is nice and flush. That clamps it down. Sometimes I've noticed when I clamp this down, it lifts this a little bit. Like I can feel it's lifted a tiny, tiny bit. So what I'm going to do is just make sure that it's nice and flush. And that feels pretty good. Okay, let's see how we did. Grab a hammer. And pull this one out. And we pull this one out. And move the router over so we don't knock it on the floor like a foolish person. This goes in here like so. And then we tap this in. And that looks pretty good. Pretty good overall. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep going with this. I'll keep going, do a few more cuts, get everything put together, and then I'll figure out what kind of spacing I want for my drills, holders, and go from there. Okay, all of the dovetails are done, dovetails are done. And now we're gonna put this thing together. So I put glue in all of the sockets. I've never glued one of these up before, so we're gonna find out if this works. I think it will though. I have faith. It's one side, and this is the other side. I marked my ends, so I know which piece is which. This guy up again. Okay, looks good. We'll slide these guys together. Like so. Give them a little assist. Okay, that went together pretty well. I actually think I have to adjust my dovetail tightness because when I put the glue in there, they are pretty snug. Which is why it's always nice to build a little side project that isn't quite as dangerous as doing, say, a bunch of drawers. So you learn something every project. Okay, and one more. And then I think I'm gonna put the back in because I'm gonna glue that as well. And then we're gonna let that sit and dry. All right, so that's what we got. Okay, so all of the supports are cut out. That's what I got sitting on the table here. I'm just going to use a 1/4 inch roundover bit, round the edges off, so it just easier on the equipment and easier on my hands if I catch a corner. And then we'll go from there. So after that, these little side blocks that I've got off here are going to go on there, and then I'm going to screw those onto the rounded off edges. Put those in the crate, if you want to call it that, a wall mount thing. Screw all that together, and then mount that thing on the wall and hang some drills in it. Probably drill a hole through one side yet. I haven't figured out if I'm going to go through the bottom. Or maybe not at all, for the plug-ins for a charger. But yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. So Gonna grab all of my math. Yeah, just did a quick mock-up here and throw some light in there so you can actually see what's going on. So yeah, as you can see, I've got the second support in. I just got a piece of wood in the back here to hold everything in place while I check it out. So put actually it's the impact driver in there. I've got my pilot holes marked out, so I'll drill those in next, throw some screws in there, and then continue on with a couple other spacings and go from there. So yeah, just a quick check to make sure that that was actually going to work. Make sure my spacing was okay. Seems to sit in there just how I want it. So yeah, we're looking good now. Okay, so we got the last one set up here to go in. And just because I said that I would show you guys what I'm doing. So what I did here is I just marked out, I measured in between this gap, what that gap was all the way along. Propped this in with this stabilizer piece underneath, clamped this in with a clamp so it's in there pretty solid. And you can see if I just feed this in here, everything fits well. It's just hanging out there. I'm happy with it. So what I'm going to do is just drill a couple of holes in the top here. Those are countersunk in. And a couple of screws. And if we pull this out, like I said, now we have room for my crud. I put an extra one in there because I really want another, actually a screwdriver. So there's a new Festool drill that I have my eye on, whether I buy it or not right now, or I just buy another DeWalt to keep the battery packs all the same is what I might do instead. But in any case, I do want another drill for doing cabinet work. So I might put that one in there. But for now, I think I'm just going to put the charger on top. I talked about drilling a hole through the cabinet, putting the charger in here, but I think I'm just going to put it on top and just run the cable along the side. I don't think there's any need to put it inside at this point, especially if I have another drill in there. Oh, I guess I have room. Yeah, we'll see. I'll put it on the wall and see what it looks like. And yeah, I'm going to run the rounder. We're going to do a round over all these edges just because it's up on the wall and I don't want to clip it as I'm walking by. Probably won't, but it always looks nicer. And maybe I'll do a quick sand on it just to clean up the face. But yeah, that's pretty much done. Super easy build overall. Not a lot of precision in it. All these steps there, I eyeballed everything. These centers aren't exactly perfect, but they're close enough for this kind of build. I didn't spend a ton of time on this. I'd say 4 hours all in all, start to finish, or at least start to this point. Just used all cutoffs that I had kicking around the shop. Pretty straightforward. If you are interested, I can definitely give you the measurements on what this is and what all the spacing is. So yeah, if you want the measurements for this, leave a comment and I will put it up there. Otherwise, yeah, you can rough that out in 4 hours and on a Saturday. It's pretty straightforward to do. You do not need to do the blind dovetails on it. That was just me practicing basically for the next build that I'm going to do. It's kind of fun though, using that kind of construction for the simple box like this. It's definitely really sturdy. Totally impressed with how it went together. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions down below, comment, and we'll go from there. Thanks for watching.